Alright, let's break this down the way people don't want to hear it, because truth has a way of rattling the bones of those who have been living in comfortable lies. What India just did with this 38,000 crore tariff move isn't some little trade adjustment. It's not a minor tweak in policy. It's a full-on economic punch thrown right at the gut of the U.S., and it landed. People think tariffs are just numbers on a spreadsheet, but in reality, tariffs are political declarations, power statements, and sometimes even warning shots. This isn't just India raising prices on some imports. This is India telling the world, we can play the game too, and we're not afraid of who's on the other side of the chessboard. You see, for decades, America's been able to throw its economic weight around like a heavyweight boxer in a room full of featherweights. They've been dictating terms, setting the rules, and expecting everyone to play along or risk getting cut out of the market. But India's not that same shy player in the background anymore. We're talking about a nation that's gone from being an economic underdog to sitting in the driver's seat of one of the fastest growing economies in the world. This tariff isn't just about protecting Indian industries. It's about asserting control, showing leverage, and making it clear that the era of one-sided trade deals is done. Now let's put the 38,000 crore figure into perspective for those who don't understand its weight. That's not small change. It's a sum that directly impacts American exports in sectors they rely on, from agricultural goods to high-value manufacturing. This tariff bombshell hits at the heart of American exporters who have gotten used to India being a lucrative, almost guaranteed market. But now, every shipment they send will cost more, every deal they sign will have slimmer margins, and every investor will start second, guessing the certainty of the Indian market. And this isn't accidental, it's strategic. Because while some people think tariffs are just defensive, India's move is both defense and offense rolled into one. Think about the timing. Moves like this aren't made in isolation. They're part of a larger chess game. The U.S. has been flexing, pressuring India on defense deals, oil imports, even its diplomatic stance with Russia. And India? Well, India just responded without firing a single missile, without moving a single soldier, but with a strike that will ripple through boardrooms in New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. Because when you hit someone in their pocket, you get their attention in a way that speeches and diplomatic notes never can. This tariff isn't just economics, it's messaging, and the message is simple. India will not be strong-armed. We will protect our farmers, our manufacturers, our supply chains, and our economic independence. And if that means making it more expensive for U.S. goods to enter, so be it. The beauty of this move lies in its dual nature. On the surface, it's a financial barrier, but underneath, it's a political stance that says, we know our worth now. Some might say, but won't this hurt Indian consumers? Won't prices go up? Yes, in the short term, some products might cost more. But here's the bigger truth. The short-term pain is a small price to pay for long-term sovereignty, because what's the alternative? Let foreign corporations dictate terms forever. Let dependency grow until one phone call from another capital can cripple your economy. No, this is about laying the foundation for a future where India controls its economic levers, not Washington, not Brussels, not Beijing. And you have to understand, this is part of a broader pattern. India's been making moves in energy independence, building domestic manufacturing capacity, securing critical minerals, and now, through tariffs, creating breathing space for local industries to grow without being undercut by subsidized imports from abroad. That's how you build real strength. You don't just wave a flag and shout slogans. You make the hard, sometimes unpopular decisions that secure the next 50 years, not just the next election cycle. But here's the kicker. The U.S. can't publicly show how much this bothers them because that would reveal just how dependent they've become on the Indian market. Instead, you'll see polite statements, dialogues, discussions, maybe even threats hidden under diplomatic smiles. But behind closed doors, companies are calling Washington, lobbyists are meeting in hushed tones, and trade strategists are recalculating everything they thought they knew about India. This is power, the ability to change the conversation without asking permission. And if you think this was spontaneous, think again. A move of this scale takes months of planning, data gathering, back-channel diplomacy, and scenario mapping. The government knew exactly which sectors to hit, exactly which industries would scream the loudest, and exactly how to send a message without escalating into a trade war. That's precision strategy. That's how you let the other side know, we can hurt you if we choose, but we're not here to burn the bridge. Yet. The beauty of this is also in the psychology, because tariffs don't just raise prices, they raise doubts. They make businesses hesitate, they make investors wonder if the landscape is shifting, and when uncertainty creeps in, that's when negotiating power shifts. Suddenly, the U.S. isn't the one dictating terms, they're the ones asking, okay, what do you want? That's a reversal of decades of trade dynamics, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. Now, let's not kid ourselves. This isn't without risk. Moves like this can backfire if you don't have a strong domestic replacement market, if your industries can't scale up fast enough to fill the gaps. But here's where India's recent investments come into play. We've got the PLI schemes, the Make in India initiatives, the infrastructure push, and the startup boom, all feeding into a system that can absorb the shock and grow stronger from it. It's like a fighter taking a calculated punch to get in position for a knockout. And for those who think this is just about India and the U.S., you're missing the bigger picture. The whole world is watching. Other nations that have felt the weight of U.S. trade dominance are taking notes. They're seeing that there's a way to push back without collapsing your economy. They're seeing that the multipolar world isn't just an idea. It's being built in real time, deal by deal, tariff by tariff. The Americans have played this game for decades. They know the power of tariffs. They've used them to bring nations to the table or even to their knees. But now, the shoe's on the other foot, and it's a different feeling entirely. The U.S. can't just walk away from India. It's too important strategically, militarily, economically, and that's the leverage India's using. This isn't recklessness. This is calculated risk with maximum impact. So here we are. India has just set a precedent. We're not just participating in the global economy, we're shaping it. We're not just reacting to global pressures, we're applying them. And that's why this 38,000 crore tariff bombshell isn't just a trade headline. It's a signal that India is ready to play the big game on its own terms. And for those who underestimated what that would look like, well, now they know. Tough decisions, bold timing, and an unshakable belief in our own capacity. That's the formula. And if this move rattles some cages in Washington, good. Because every cage that rattles somewhere else means a door is opening here at home. And in the end, that's what building a future is all about: control, dignity, and the courage to take the hits today so you can own the ring tomorrow. When you look at history, real transformation never comes from playing it safe, never from following the script somebody else wrote for you, and never from waiting for permission. It comes from moments when a nation, a leader, or a people decide that they will no longer live in someone else's shadow. They will no longer allow their potential to be defined by external forces, and they will no longer let fear dictate the limits of their ambition. This decision was exactly one of those moments for India. It wasn't just a change in policy, It was a signal to the world, a declaration that India was ready to control its own destiny, write its own rules, and shape its own future, with innovation as its weapon and self-reliance as its shield. For decades, India had been forced into reactive positions, responding to global events instead of creating them, adapting to technological advances instead of leading them, accommodating foreign economic pressures instead of setting the terms. This decision shattered that pattern. It was a statement that the time of bending and adjusting was over. From this point forward, India would operate from a position of strength, with a military doctrine that wasn't just about defense, but about deterrence, dominance, and technological superiority, tied directly to its economic and industrial capability. The genius of this moment lay in the fact that it didn't just address a short-term challenge, it was designed to build a framework for long-term power. The connection between military doctrine and innovation is often underestimated by those who think in linear terms, but India's leadership understood something crucial. The battlefield of the future is not only on land, sea, and air, it's in the labs, the factories, the coding rooms, the satellite control centers, and the AI-driven decision hubs. By aligning military strength with homegrown innovation, India was effectively fusing its national defense strategy with its economic growth model, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where advances in one sphere directly fuel advancements in the other. That means every new drone, every new AI system, every missile guidance upgrade, every cybersecurity breakthrough, every indigenous satellite launch isn't just a military asset. It's an economic multiplier, an industrial driver, and a symbol of sovereignty. Self-reliance in this context isn't some abstract slogan. It's the removal of vulnerabilities that other powers can exploit. When your military systems are dependent on foreign suppliers, you're always at risk of supply chain sabotage, price manipulation, technology restrictions, or political blackmail. India has experienced that vulnerability before, times when global powers used access to defense technologies as leverage to influence political decisions. This doctrine was the antidote to that. The goal was to ensure that no foreign capital could control the critical arteries of India's security infrastructure, and no external entity could turn off the flow of vital technologies when geopolitical tensions heat up. That's why this decision was not just about tariffs or defense budgets. It was about building a strategic ecosystem in which India produces what it needs, improves it constantly, and uses it to negotiate from a position of unshakable confidence. This doctrine was also a cultural pivot. For too long, the global narrative painted India as a nation of service providers, a back office for the world, a place that executed other nations' ideas. That image is now obsolete. The new identity is that of a creator and innovator, a nation that not only participates in cutting-edge technology but leads it. And this is not about copying models from the West or East. It's about creating uniquely Indian solutions, engineered in a way that reflects the country's own realities, challenges, and aspirations. The decision marked the start of a new wave of technological patriotism, where scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, and defense planners are all part of the same mission: to make India's military capability and economic prosperity inseparable. If you really want to understand the depth of this shift, you have to see how interconnected the military and economic dimensions have become. The old model separated them. You had defense policy over here, economic policy over there, and they met only at the budget stage. But this doctrine recognized that in a modern power structure, economic sovereignty and military sovereignty are two halves of the same whole. You can't have one without the other, because wars are now fought with trade deals, sanctions, cyber attacks, and control of supply chains as much as they are with tanks and jets. When your innovation ecosystem is tied to your defense goals, every new technological advance becomes a weapon of strategic leverage, even if it never fires a shot. That is the future India is preparing for, one where the lines between economic competition and military competition blur. And winning requires mastery of both. It's also important to see the psychological impact of this doctrine. For domestic audiences, it generates pride, unity, and a shared sense of mission. It tells the young innovators in Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Pune, and IIT campuses across the country that their work is not just about career success, it's about national destiny. It tells every small manufacturer producing components for defense that they are as critical to national security as a soldier on the border. And internationally, it sends a message that India is not waiting for permission to lead. It signals to adversaries that the country is prepared to defend itself on all fronts, military, economic, technological, and to allies that partnering with India means partnering with a country that brings real capability to the table. This doctrine also ensures resilience in a world where the pace of change is accelerating. Think about how quickly technology cycles move now. What's cutting edge today is outdated in a few years. If your military strength depends on buying from others, you're always behind the curve, always dependent on someone else's upgrade schedule, and always paying a premium for the privilege. But when you own the innovation pipeline, you're not only keeping pace, you can leapfrog. You can design systems that are tailored to your needs instead of adapting someone else's designs. You can integrate your industrial base, your research centers, and your military in a feedback loop where every lesson learned in the field informs the next generation of technology. That's how you stay ahead, not just for 1 year, but for decades. Critics will say this path is harder, and they're right. It's harder to build your own capabilities than to buy them. It requires investment, discipline, vision, and the patience to endure early setbacks. But the payoff is enormous. Every step towards self-reliance reduces strategic vulnerability. Every indigenous breakthrough makes foreign leverage less effective. Every young innovator working in this ecosystem becomes part of a national shield that no missile can penetrate. And every rupee invested in this system circulates within India, creating jobs, building industries, and deepening expertise that will spill over into civilian applications, boosting the overall economy. Perhaps the most overlooked advantage of this doctrine is its adaptability. By grounding it in innovation, India isn't locking itself into a fixed set of capabilities. It's building a system that can pivot as threats evolve. Whether the challenge is cyber warfare, autonomous weapons, space-based systems, or even biotechnological threats, the framework allows for rapid response because it's built on the capacity to innovate internally rather than wait for someone else to hand over a solution. In the geopolitical chessboard, that kind of flexibility is priceless, and this is where vision meets execution. A doctrine without action is just a speech. But what India has done is tie this vision to concrete policies, tariff protections for strategic industries, investments in R/D, public-private defense collaborations, incentives for indigenous manufacturing, and international partnerships where India is an equal player, not a passive consumer. The synergy between government vision, private sector innovation, and military necessity is what will carry this forward. It's a doctrine that says, we will fight, we will build, and we will innovate not in separate lanes, but as one unified national mission. This is why this moment will be remembered as a turning point. Not because of a single policy change, but because it redefined how India sees itself and how the world will have to see India. It marked the end of the old posture of cautious accommodation and the beginning of an era of proactive strength. It's the birth of a doctrine that doesn't just prepare for the next conflict, it shapes the very environment in which that conflict would occur. And in doing so, it places India firmly on the path toward being a self-reliant, innovation-driven powerhouse whose military and economic strength are inseparable, mutually reinforcing, and entirely under its own control.